G'day, welcome to Pay It Forward. Who's ready for afternoon tea? I've got it all sorted. No, it's today's pattern, and I promised you some little tea time treats to go with my little tea time series. So this is the first. It's a little layer cake, and it's made up very sneakily out of sponges, and I think you're going to find it really quick and easy to make. I know I said I'd challenge you at times, but today is not that day. Today is all about fun. It's nice to do a really quick, fun little project. So you'll need a great pattern. I've got one of those for you, and it's in the description. All you need to do is click on that link. Make sure you set your printer settings to print at actual size, and your templates will be spot on. All we need to do is get started. Right, so let's get started on making our little cake slice. Now, I have actually designed this one to be made up using just a standard foam. Now, it's a foam kitchen sponge that I use. I did design this one many years ago, and I used to make it up in a celluloid style sponge, but these type do dry out, so do avoid these. What you want is a nice dry foam, and the one that I find is the best is a little kitchen scourer. These are available right the world over. You've probably got them in different colours in your part of the world. We've only got them in the yellow base. We take that little top scrubber off, and it's just a standard dry foam. You might have all sorts of different foam sponges that you find. What you have to remember is that we're putting 3 layers in. The rest of our icing has been designed to fit a certain size. So long as your little foam pieces are they're just about 2 centimetres in width, then this whole little thing will fit together well. So I buy a pack of 3, that's how many that we need, and we remove that little green top, which I'll show you how to do moving forward. So we've got our 3 little pieces cut. Now, for cutting out all the little pieces in this little project, I'm going to put a link up the top here to my cutting and laying out video. Might help you out there. But we've cut those out of our foam, and I'm going to show you the best way to do that, especially to get nice little points, because these little points, we don't finish these edges, so we want everything nice and clean. So first of all, removing that backing is quite simple. It will just pull away. Okay, so once that one's pulled off, we mark out our pattern on our smooth side, not on our side that we've just torn away. Find your best point on your sponge. This one looks pretty good. So I've got my pattern piece, and I'm going to line my pattern piece up along that line, because then I don't have to cut that one, and it's already nice and sharp. And you can see I've designed this pattern to just fit these sponges perfectly. I've got my marker, and I just simply go around those 2 edges. And then when you cut this little one, let me just pull this one all the way off. You can see that it really does just pull away easily. Just do it bit by bit. Don't need to worry about that little torn side, because that will be glued down. We won't be seeing that. So there we've got our little shape, and the best way to cut that one out to preserve that corner is to cut directly from that edge, from that point. Then we know we're really getting it right. And you might think, gosh, that's pretty thick, it won't cut cleanly, but it does, thankfully. So nice big strokes with your scissors, and right to the end. And you see, lovely clean line there. Do make sure that you take off any little pen lines, any pen marks, because we're not finishing those edges. We don't want to see those. We want that nice and clean. Cut that little piece off, and then you've got your 3 little sponge pieces. And that's how we're going to be making our little layers. So the next thing we need, of course, are our layers. So we've got some jammy coloured jam pieces, so they will be going on first. So we've got 2 of those, one for in between each layer. And then we've got, you can use several things for your cream, for your mock cream. I'm just using some wadding. It's some cotton wadding, and cut those to shape. You can use, probably the best thing is a fine polar fleece. That works really well. I would have liked this to be a little bit thicker, but I'm using what I've got. So I've got my jam layer, I've got my cream layer, and then of course we're just going to alternate and do that again and again and again, and it's only the icing that goes on the top. Now in between those layers we can add a few little felt pieces just peeping out, and that they just have to be little scraps, and you can add them randomly before we put our little cream layer down. And once that's all done, it just means you see a few little bits and pieces of those little cherries or jammy bits poking out. So we've got those pieces, we've got our little jammy bits, and then we're going to need our base. So our base for our little cake slice is cut from double felt. Double felt is simply 2 pieces of felt fused together with heat and bond or fusible webbing. I've also got a video that shows you how to do that. I will pop the link up there for you. So that one's cut from double felt. Then we need our icing top, and that is cut from double felt, and so is the side icing piece. So there's a little bit of sewing in this project, but really not very much. It's the little bit of sewing is in the fruit. So, and you can see today I'm going to go with a pink icing. You could use caramel. I mean, this could be caramel icing. You could go crazy. You could have green icing, whatever you like. And if you're lucky enough to be able to get these sponges in different colours, of course that opens up a whole new set of options for you. So then we have our little toppings, and our little toppings, we've got a little cream fan, and again that one is cut from double felt, and ideally if you have off-white on one side and a very brilliant white on the other, it just adds a little more depth perception when we fold that one up. So that's for our cream. We're going to make a little handmade strawberry, and those are cut from just ordinary felt. Now I actually have heat and bond on the back of mine because I rarely do anything just in felt untreated. You don't have to. You can make the strawberry just with plain felt. That's not a problem at all. So you need a back and a front for that one. And you also need the little top piece. Now this one I do add heat and bond. It just keeps the little tops nice and crisp. And that one is obviously cut in green. And we're going to need, to be able to make our little blueberries, I've given you 2 sizes for the blueberries to make a smaller one and a larger one. So this is our smaller blueberry already made up, you can see there, with a smaller bead. So what's inside there is just exactly that. It's just a little bead that's going to sit inside there, and then we're going to pull up all the way around that little bead. So in this case I'm using a felt, and I'm not doing anything to it. It is just a nice soft felt so that it will pull in nicely. You really need to use felt. The only other thing I would use is possibly lycra, because it will stretch nicely around that bead, though you may need to make your circle a little bit smaller because of that stretch. But just to show you today, it works beautifully in felt. So you need your little bead to suit. And the best thing I can tell you about the size of that bead is to say blueberry size. But have a few there, try them out, see what fits in your little circle, and remember you've got 2 to choose from, and you should be right. You'll also need some hand sewing threads. I've got my Gutermann in all sorts of colours there, and your sewing thread, extra strong sewing thread to sew up our little icing pieces. And we will definitely need clear craft glue. So this one is suitable for fabric, it's quick drying, and this is basically how we put this little one together. So it's important to have a good one. So that's it, that's all we're going to need. So let's get started, and we're going to start building this little layer cake. move all these others out the way. So you've seen the process of putting that one together. So we've got all our pieces, and we start with our craft glue, and I'm just going to generously glue up, making sure I get all of those edges, my foam base to start with. Now remember that this is the basis of how this little layer cake is held together, so be quite generous with your glue, you can see there, and particularly at this tip, because we really need those little edges to hold together. And the way that I pop it on is I start from the front and I overextend it a little, and then I pull back into position there, just to make sure that I really get that little tip sealed, but it also pulls the glue back a little bit so it's not flowing over quite so much. You will get a little bit of glue squeezing out, that's fine, it's quite invisible. As you go, pressing it all down, checking that all your lines are lined up. Now if you've got a little bit extra here, the best part about that is we can just trim that off, so don't worry too much. Just make sure that everything else, and this is the most important part here, this little front here. So you can remove your excess glue. You will get gluey fingers making this one for sure. So you want to press that one down, and your sponge will just bounce back. Get that one nicely into place. And then we're going to add, if you're adding your little jammy pieces, we can add a couple of those. Just a tiny bit of glue. It's just to keep it there, because the next layer will hold it. So right on the edge there, pop those in both sides, make sure that they're random, and then we add our next layer. So there I have my first layer done, my couple of little cherry pieces, and now all we need to do is continue and do exactly the same thing. Add my little cherry pieces, my cream, and my top layer, and glue those all together exactly as we did that first layer. Make sure that we're really lining up that front. This is the most important section, and make sure all of those little joins have enough glue there to hold them together. So that's our little cake seam sewn. Flip that one over and really roll out that seam. We want a nice rounded edge so that it looks like our icing is just flowing over our cake. Test that one on your cake and you'll see that will just sit beautifully and line up all the way around. We use a double felt because it just gives it that little bit more substance to the icing. It's definitely worth doubling it up. So our next step is just to glue that one on. So again, we're going to add glue to our top, just as we did before. So there I've got all my glue on top, and remember again, this isn't being sewn on, so we want to make sure that there's enough glue on there to hold that all over the surface, right there at the tip again. And so adding this little top icing layer is the same way. We're going to extend a little forward and pull it back till it's nicely in position, and then drop that icing on. I guess it's not unlike actually putting fondant icing on, is it really? It's very similar, draping it over, only we get to use pins here. So just line up all your edges again. Remember that we can trim any overlap that we have. What's most important that we get it all lined up here at the back. Now here I like to add some pins while this one's drying. So once I've got it all into position, I particularly like to anchor that back section while it dries, so those corners are nice and tightly sealed. You can add one at the front there if you like, but be careful there, we don't want to damage that tip. Stand him on his head, give him a little squeeze. And again, we're just going to let that one sit there and dry. We need that nice and dry for our next step. Once it's dry, we can do any trimming that we want to do. So I'll leave that one for probably around about 15 minutes. So now I've got my little top layer of my icing quite dry. I'm going to flip this one back and I'm going to coat the back of all of this section. You can give it a little trim if it's not all smooth, and I'm going to coat this section and lay this one down. So I have all my glue on there, and particularly in those little jammy sections there, and remember that it's your edges that you see, so make sure we get right up into those little corners, and then it's just a matter of flipping that one down and we're going to line that all up. We'll have a bit of glue excess, that's fine, we can move that, wipe that out the way. It's more important to get that good seal there. So compressing that, just take the glue. I did say we were going to get gluey fingers, you definitely will. And exactly as I did before, I'm now going to add my pins in my key points. So I'm going to be leaving these ones in, leave those pins in. I'm going to add my pins in all of my little key points here to keep that all pressed down while it's drying. And then we're going to set that one aside for another 15 minutes or so to dry. Right, so now I've got my icing here, it is nicely dried. You see all my pins in there, holding that nicely. I'm keeping them all in there. And now we're going to add our little base section. You see that I've got quite a bit of overlap there, that's fine. We're going to trim that off. It's better to have too much than not enough. It's my motto anyway. So I have glued up that layer again. You can see that I've added some glue just a little way up that little edge there because it's going to form a little rim there, and I promise this is the last layer to be glued. So again, we start forward, we pull it back a little, and we're going to line that all up. I love the little base on this cake, such a great finish. Okay, so you can see there that I've got my little edge lined up at the front, and I'm going to press that one down and I'm going to create a little lip as I do that. So I really want to get right into that edge, and I always think when I get to this stage I think, oh, I need to design a little cheesecake, and I bet you can all see how I'm going to do it. Because that looks like a cheesecake, doesn't it? Or a lemon meringue pie. Maybe that'll be the next treat that I make for you all, with lemon slices. That would be exciting. Alright, so I'm pressing that all in and all down. My edges are nicely lined up. And again, we're going to secure these points. So I'm going to pop my pins in. I'll probably remove a couple from here now, and pop them right in at these key points. So we want these to really hold together. And then we're going to be trimming that off, and we're going to be sewing our final little blanket stitch so that everything is neat and held in together. So again, more drying time, 15 minutes or so, and we'll come back and finish that one off. So now that my little cake base is all dry, notice I've still got all my pins in, and I have just trimmed off that lower edge. So I've trimmed it off just to be equal with this edge here, which is easy to do once it's dry. And now I'm going to sew. I'm using pearl thread because it's got a bit more substance to it, and I'm going to sew a blanket stitch across that little edge just because it neatens it off and it finishes it really beautifully. If you haven't sewn a blanket stitch before, I've got a video that shows you how to do that one, and I'm going to pop the link up there for you. You can check that out. Now I've got my pearl thread on and a knot in the end, and you can see I've just gone in here and come out at the end here. That little knot I'm going to hide in between my layers and in with my sewing. And so now I'm going to take that little first pin out, and I can start my blanket stitch. It's really quite easy on this because it's double. I know it's double felt and it's quite thick, but it's very soft. So blanket stitch is just going through both layers and bringing your needle out through the loop each time. Make sure you really anchor that first one in. I'm going to keep our stitches probably about, I'd say they're about 4 millimeters. So through both layers, coming out through the loop. Keep them nice and even. Perfect little finish for our little cake base. You see there that that's just going to be a really tidy little edge, just like it is on this one here. So I'm going to work that stitch right the way across. And there we have our perfect little blank little cake slice. So now let's make a start on our little toppings. So we're going to start with our little strawberry. You've got your two little pieces here. We're just going to put right sides together and match up that little top there, those two little points there. And I'm going to sew a little overcasting stitch right the way around from this top point right the way around to the other top point. Then I'm going to take that one to the machine and sew just a tiny little, it's probably only about 3 millimeters seam allowance, right the way around. Make sure you're back and forth at the start. By overcasting it as I have here, it just makes it easier to manage. It's such a little piece under the machine. So I'll sew all the way around that little strawberry. And there I have my little strawberry all sewn there. So I'm going to take my forceps, which is the easiest way to turn this little strawberry from the base. Just turn it in on itself and push that little end through. My forceps will help push it out. And we'll just push out those little corners to create our little heart shape. And then we've got our little opening there. Roll those seams out. We've got our little strawberry ready to be filled. So we're going to be filling with a little bit of polyester filling. Be surprised how much it will take. Again, I'm going to use my forceps and I'm just going to fill up, really packing out that little tip. Now it's important that we do pack this one as firm as you can because we're going to be sewing the little seeds in, which will be compressing it in. So if it's too soft, you'll end up with a flat little strawberry. We like a nice plump little strawberry. So really fill that one out. Make sure that you fill out this top section here, and we're going to fill up till almost the top. Use your wool felting needle as you go and it'll help you pack it all in. Add a little bit more and pack it all in, you'll get a nice clean top there. So I've got my little strawberry all packed nice and firm, helping with my little needle felting needle there. And now I'm going to close that opening. Now I have my extra strong thread. I've got quite a long thread there, better to have too much than not enough. I haven't got a knot in the end and it is in green. So it's green because we're also going to be adding our little top leaves after we've done this stage. Now I'm going to sew a little gathering thread all the way around that little top edge. Best way to do that is, you can see there, I've just popped my thumb in there and I'm just going to start right close to the edge there. It's probably only 2 millimeters. And I'm going to sew a very small, leave my tail ends hanging, a very small running stitch. and we're going to go right the way around the top until we come back to here. So I've gone all the way around, and now I've tied off just one little knot, and that will allow me to pull that one in, and I want to pull that little top in till it's completely closed, and I will just knot that off about 3 times. I've got my little ends tied off, and so now my shorter end I'm going to trim off out the way, and my other end I've re-threaded onto a longer needle, so it doesn't have to be as long as this one, it just needs to be able to pass all the way through your strawberry and back again. So the first thing we're going to do is dive into that strawberry, go right through to the base, doesn't really matter where. Perhaps just avoid that seam line because it's easier to come back in. We're going to go back into the same hole that we just came out of. We're going to come back out again, and this time we're going to be adding our little leaf star. So we just want to come out somewhere in the center of our little leaf star there. Get that one nicely centered on top. We're going to dive back in. We're going to do the same thing, and that will pull our little star in just a little. So we don't want him to completely disappear, so don't pull too hard. And I'm just going to do that a couple of times, and that will sculpt that little top leaf section in beautifully. So probably 3 times. You have to remember that it's only for display, so it won't be getting played with particularly. So straight through, and then I'll just dive underneath there. Make a little knot, go through the loop to make a little knot, dive back into my strawberry, come out anywhere there, pull on that thread and snip, and that end is lost. So you've got your little strawberry with its little top. And so our next step is to add our little seeds. And to add our little seeds, we have, again, I have my extra strong Gutermann thread, and I have that single thread, and it is a golden colour. So it's a golden fawn colour, just to indicate those little seeds. And we're just going to go in underneath those little leaves. I've got a knot in the end. Now make sure your thread's long enough, because we're going to go in and out of that little strawberry quite a bit. We're going to hide our little knot underneath those leaves, and we're going to come out anywhere on that little strawberry. Pull that knot in so that it's hidden, and now we're just going to make our way over the surface of that strawberry. My little seeds are probably around about 2 millimeters, so I'm diving in, I'm coming out anywhere on the strawberry on the other side, and I just give it a little tug. So I'm just pulling it in a little. I'm going to dive in again, I'm going to come out, check that I've pulled that one in, and you can see just enough of that colour for it to look like a little seed. Now the main little seeds that I put in, obviously you could absolutely smother it in seeds, but the main seeds are most visible in that top section. So you can see I'm just going in and out, and it doesn't matter where I come back out, you just focus on filling all your little gaps and giving it a little tug as you go each time. And don't forget the sides, So just angle to the side here. You can add your little ones that will pull that in there nicely too. So it's a little time consuming, but it's actually quicker than you think. And you don't need a huge amount of little seeds to give the indication of a little strawberry. You can see that coming together there. Pull all your little fibres away. So I'll go through that one, and then you'll just end off in the same way. Hide your little knot underneath your little leaf section there. What you end up with is your little strawberry all ready to go on the top of your cake. So now we can move ahead and make our little blueberries. Okay, so we're going to start on our little blueberry. Now this is the smaller one. The one I'm going to be showing to you is the bigger one. They're made exactly the same way. So this is a slightly bigger bead than is in this one. You've got the two options there, but I do like the two different sizes. I think it just breaks it all up and it looks lovely. Now remember, you could make a whole lot of little ones. You could cover the whole top of the cake. That's entirely up to you. You've got the pattern now, so you can do that. Now this is the larger disc, felt disc that I've cut out. You can see there's a little spot marking on your template. Pop that in because it's important. I'm going to flip this one over and we're going to work on the side that doesn't have the spot. And I've got my needle again generously threaded with that same colour that I used for the strawberry seeds, because we want to make a little indication of that little base of the blueberry with this colour. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing with a drawstring right the way around the edge of this little piece of felt, which has nothing on it because we need it to be quite pliable and mouldable. So I will make my way right round the edge of that circle and come back to here. So now I have my drawstring in place. I've just flipped that one over, but I've tied one little knot ready to pull that in. That little spot there, that's where we're going to add our little bead, and I do find it a little bit easier if you just add a little bit of glue just to the base of your bead, just where it's going to settle in there. Not over the hole, because we need to pull our needle through that hole. And I do find wooden beads are the best. They just seem to be easier to handle. So I'm just going to pop that one right in the centre there. And then I can pull up my threads. Now, are these fiddly? Yes, they are. But I have to say that it's the easiest way to make a little blueberry. For something so small, it's surprisingly easy. So initially pull it up. You can see that you pull your threads right in. Now we want to get that right in tight. So I'm going to really pull that in tight. We're going to do some extra stitching work to really pull that in, but as tight as you can get that, and tie that off about 3 times, knot that off about 3 times, but leave the threads on for now because we're going to need them. There's the base of my little blueberry with it all pulled in and my little knots there. So as I did before with the strawberry, I'm going to take one end off. Keep your longer end if one is longer than the other, and I have again re-threaded that one in there. So now I'm going to take some of that fabric, dive it into the hole in the centre. I'm going to come out right in the centre there, take a little stitch wherever you can find that little hole, and I'm going to come out again, and each time I'm going to take some of that excess fabric and pull it in through. What I'm trying to achieve is making a little divot there in that blueberry at the base. Just gives an indication of colour there, just that little touch of real, taking some of that fabric each time. And once it's all together like this, it's no longer fiddly. As I said, you can use lycra if you can get it in the right colour, which would be the most difficult part. Makes up beautiful little blueberries. And also remember that you can make cherries this way too. You just need a larger bead and a larger beginning circle. So you can see that I've got my little colour marked in there. You can go through as many times as you like. So now I just like to tidy up this base and really draw all of those gathers in, and it will because it's felt, and really tuck that in and make that little base as neat as we can. Now don't worry about the stitching, because when we add this little blueberry, we're going to be adding it with hot glue, and you won't see that base. And in fact, that little base being a bit porous like that, it creates better adhesion when we hot glue that on. So there's our two little blueberries. I'll just tidy that base up and they're ready to go on our cake, and we can move forward and make our little cream fan. So let's make our little cream fan. Now this is very simple. Now you've got your little piece, it's your double felt, preferably white and off-white, and I have my needle with my extra strong upholstery thread again, and I'm ready to, and I've got it in white of course. Now I've got the off-white facing upwards, and all I'm going to do is fold that little strip up just like we used to when we were kids, like a little fan. Now the increments are probably just under 1.5 centimetres each fold. Should fold that up neatly and match up at the end. You can see there. And as we go, keep it nice and neat and all the same. As we go, we're going to just stitch one edge. Doesn't matter which edge, but we just want to hold those little folds in place as we continue to do the entire strip. I guess you could fold up the whole strip and put a clamp on it and then stitch it all at the end. I just find it easier to do it as I go, and then I can keep it nice and tidy. So there we go, and I just continue keeping it all nice and even. And adding those little stitches as I go. So I'm going to do the entire strip that way until I've got a nice tight little wad. So my little base is all very secure, and now I just have my little cream fan that will open out, and by doing it this way, there's so many ways that you can make mock cream in sort of faux felt cakes, but this one I think is probably the easiest. Some of them are just so fiddly, it can be really off-putting. So I think this one gives you a lovely frame to put behind your strawberries. You can see there it just opens out and it gives you that lovely backdrop for your fruit. So that one's all ready, and we've got our strawberry and our blueberries. All we need to do is add them to the top of our cake. And now the fun part, we get to add our little toppings. It's always the fun part, isn't it, even when we're baking. Right, so we're going to add our little toppings. Now there's a few ways that you can do this, and of course you might want 2 strawberries. You might have made 2 strawberries, or maybe you've just made blueberries. It all depends on the colours that you're using and so on. Now this little one, I've actually angled my topping so that my cake can be on display on the side, and I've got this little lovely little frame up here. You can see how that cream is sitting across the back there. So in that case, I would tuck it around like this, and I would build up my strawberries and blueberries in front there for that sort of angle. However, because I have this little one like that, and I would like to photograph them and display them together, I'm going to actually situate this one right in the center at the back. Now I'm going to be hot gluing these ones on because, and I'm not a hot glue fan, I rarely use it, but I tell you what, when you've got a good use for it, it's fabulous stuff. So, and it works particularly well with felt without leaving a residue. So I will be, and again, that little cream fan, the design this way so that you've got all of that base to add your hot glue to be able to push that little fan right down, and it's very easy to do. So let's just plan it out though. So there's my little cream fan, and I've got the white side facing us, and then I will drop my little strawberry in here, tuck that one in here, and I will probably put my large blueberry to the back and my little blueberry to the front. Have a little play with some layouts, but I think then I can actually photograph my little pieces of cake together and I'm getting a good look at both of those little angles. So once you're happy with your layout, it's just a simple matter of going ahead and hot gluing those into place, and make sure that you think about how you're going to place them. So my strawberry would go on last. Fan on first, blueberries in place, and then my strawberry will go in last. And make sure that you avoid having any glue showing obviously at the front there. So there we have our second little cake slice all done. I absolutely love the pink. It makes it look really fresh, doesn't it? Think about all of the colour combinations you can do. Now moving forward, as I was saying, now that I feel that I'm going to make a lemon meringue pie slice and some cheesecakes, I'm definitely going to be having different toppings for each of them. So there'll be things like lemon slices and lime slices and some wafers and all that sort of thing. You'll be able to mix and match them and add all the different toppings you like to your different little cake concoctions. I hope you've enjoyed making it. I absolutely had a whole lot of fun, so I would love to make more, time allowing. So I hope you enjoy making them up in all sorts of different flavours. Well, thank you all for joining me today. I wish this was real at this point. I could do with a cuppa. So I hope you have enjoyed this one. If you have, give me a thumbs up. That would be absolutely beaut. What do you think? More tea time treats? I think so. I think there definitely needs to be a lemon meringue pie for sure, for starters. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of those. And you know what? You can follow me on Instagram, and then you can get sneaky little peeks at the upcoming projects. And also you can send me pictures of your finished little projects. I love to see what you're making with my patterns. And now I want to see little cakes, because I want to see all of the coloured sponges that I can't get here in Oz. I'm sure you'll do that for me. So make them up and send me pictures. I love it. So remember to subscribe. Don't want to miss any of the upcoming patterns. There will definitely be more treats, and there will be mini quilts, so many more things coming. I'm hearing everything that you're telling me. Keep talking to me. I love it. I love to chat to you all. Most of all, everybody, all of the wonderful things you have that come your way, make sure that you pay them forward. Until next time, it's Uru from me.